For thousands of years, work has defined us, but have we truly grasped its potential? Today, we're standing on the threshold of a new age, Work 9.0, the era of self-actualization. But what does it take for visionary leaders to guide humanity towards the next frontier? And are you, as an enlightened founder, prepared to lead this evolution?
Well, I'm not going to sit here and claim the enlightened founder mantle or crown or whatever the hell it is, right?
You get a gold star.
Gold star, exactly. But yeah, I'm prepared to be part of the conversation. I want to be part of the conversation, right? I think that this is why I spent 5 years writing, Work 9.0. It's to push this conversation along. It's to push people, specifically founders, in terms of really thinking through the impact that they can have on us taking the human journey to the next level. It's more specifically, as you said, in terms of getting more and more of us feeling like we genuinely enjoy living. We genuinely enjoy making the world better. We genuinely enjoy doing work. And we genuinely enjoy creating environments where others enjoy, doing the work because, as I've been writing about for a long time now, I don't believe you can self-actualize without doing work, without mattering, without making things better. And I think that's innate in who we are. Forever work in progress as individuals, as a family, as a team, as a company, as a society, for sure. But I think the long arc of what we're doing is focused on making things better, and ultimately that involves work, and so we should do work that we genuinely love doing.
Crucial element of great leadership is awareness. You talk about the moment we're in as a critical junction in human history.
Yeah.
Can you unpack exactly what makes this moment so unique and urgent for leaders?
Well, that's a deep subject. So I believe, and as I wrote about, we're coming out of the age of information. We're coming out of it because we've done this amazing job of collecting information and making it available for all practical purposes for virtually free, right? On the internet, as an example. As a part of that whole journey that we've taken recently, there's so much information out there that we're overwhelmed by it. And I believe that overwhelm that we've all experienced is part of what's pushed us, propelled us, made us want to shift from Work 7.0, which is the age of information, to Work 8.0, which is the age of understanding all this stuff. And as you said, putting us on the path to get to Work 9.0, which is where you genuinely have a bunch of people who feel like they're self-actualizing. They're doing really good work that they love doing. Not to go too dark, but every single time you transition from one age to another, you are upsetting the status quo. You're literally changing things that a lot of people have become personally invested in. We see this across all sorts of elements of life, of society. So we see this in terms of the media, obviously being traditional media being hugely disrupted by this new age. You look at all the tension that's going on inside of government, and whether it's Doge or whether it's just, are we doing things as well as we could be doing? Are we being efficient and effective? Or are we basically protecting that which is no longer useful, right? So you've got all these areas where there's a lot of status that are being challenged. So there's media, there's government, there are a lot of other institutions right now that are being challenged. The tariffs is all about challenging economic relationships, right? The universities, right? There's a lot of pressure on, is this right? Is this really the best way for us to work? Is this really the best thing for, are we designed the most effectively and efficiently for living up to our responsibilities, our charter, how we make the world a better place? So I believe that we're going through a transition that's challenging a lot of quote unquote status quo. AI is part of this whole transition. And because we are threatening, because society, because the way things are evolving is threatening all these different quote unquote institutions, I actually believe there's going to be a lot of turmoil associated with the age of understanding. There's got a lot to be arm wrestling and reconciliations and people competing for, sort of a winning narrative, for lack of a better expression. And, I believe we're in I believe it's not going to be an easy transition. But I deeply believe that we will come out of it over the long run in an amazing place, because we will better understand things. We'll have better technologies, better insights, better perspectives, more evolved perspectives. So I think 8.0 is going to be hard. But when I started writing Work 9.0, I did not have a point of view on when I think Work 9.0 will start to actually materialize in any significant manner. I actually have it's just a stupid crystal ball, but I believe plus or minus in 10 years, we're going to come out and be in a much better position than we are today. But I believe it's going to be harder between now and 10 years from now.
But 10 years, it's all great and flowery and amazing.
Well, the simple answer is no. But I believe that for more and more people within the world, right, whether you look at it on a country basis or a regional basis or however you look at it, I do believe we'll start to see an uptick in the percentage of people that genuinely, are flourishing, for lack of a better term, who genuinely believe that they are self-actualizing.
And then on the whole, even if you're not in that part of your journey, you're still on a trajectory to get closer to being at that stage.
Yeah. And so a word I don't really like is hope. Because hope to me has issues in that you're relying on someone else as opposed to taking responsibility for yourself. But I believe that more and more people will see that and appreciate that they're on a journey that is likely to end up with them feeling really good about who they are and where they are and where they're going.
So directionally optimistic.
Directionally optimistic, yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Do you see sort of some people that are going to be in a better position than others to really lean into the things moving into the next stage?
Yes.
And there's going to be a lot of people that are resistant, more attached to the status quo.
Yes.
Do you see that sort of stratification between those two groups, right? To overly simplify it into two groups.
Yeah.
Do you see that causing a lot of the issues over the next 10 years?
Yeah, because let's go down to, the age-old cultural stuff, right? Which is individual versus group, right? You are going to have people fighting for the groups, right? And taking away the agency of the individual. That's a cultural thing, right? And so I do not see us reconciling the group versus individual tension within within the next 10 years, right? That tension is always going to be there, and there will be those who would rather use the phrase a lot. There will be those who would rather belong and have comfort than have agency and struggle in order to get more of what they want, right? So I think that tension is not going to go away, and because of that, there's no way that we will ever reconcile the fact that some people are better at other people at certain types of things. We cannot make everybody the same, right?
What's a good thing that we have some people who are really good at some stuff and other people that are really good at other things,
And we should
and
celebrate
have a
that.
diversity of perspectives so that
Yes.
one thing doesn't just go off on its own.
Right.
and
So
crazy.
so giving up agency for, for sameness is insane. Because it's an impossible, completely ridiculous concept, right? Which I think we've talked about before, right? Was Kurt Vonnegut's short story where, if you were smarter or better looking or stronger or any of these things, right, society would handicap you to the point where you were all the same. And, it can never be, you can never, you can't have that happen without taking away people's unalienable rights. And
There's a lot of stories, sci-fi, dystopian stuff about this.
yeah, like so many, right, there's tons of movies and stories that go down this rabbit hole.
Yeah. And I think any of the founding fathers sort of thing where it's like, you don't sacrifice freedom for safety or whatever, right? That's not the right way to phrase it, but
Yeah.
I think they're all kind of that thing, and
Yeah.
that's why this country exists,
Yes.
right? But you want to incentivize agency and give people that power to pull themselves up, right? And go back to your thing on hope. Hope is sort of like, let's just sit back and probably make things worse for myself. Just wish for the off chance that something is going to turn out better for me of someone else's doing.
Yes.
And it's like, that's not really a good strategy. I think everyone kind of knows that's not a good strategy, but it's a lot easier to just be comfortable and feel safe than it is to step into the unknown, right? Step into the chasm between stages of work.
Yeah.
Right. And see what's going on and ideally lead people that don't have you could say the privilege of leading themselves.
Right.
Because there are going to be people that struggle here, whether it's personality or situation or whatever.
Yeah.
And those who can do it have, I would say, a responsibility to help others
Yes.
through that journey, through that unknown.
Yeah. Noblesse oblige, right? And it's Maslow's, it's Levinger's, right? Maslow's is like, yes, we do pass through these stages. We have to, get level 1 to be okay at, right? We have food, we have water, right? And then security, and then belonging, and then self-esteem, and then self-actualization. You just don't all of a sudden end up at self-actualized, right? Just like in Levinger's, you have to pass through the stages of fighting for yourself, stage 3, right? Stage 4, belonging, stage 5, starting to have your own points of view, right? Et cetera, et cetera. So if you're focused on trying to meet everybody at the belonging stage, and that's it, right? Then those who want to move beyond are being suppressed or worse, right? And so back to the point is, in the original question, is there will always be differences in who we are. There will always be, levels of competency. There will always be people that are great at some stuff and not great at other things. And it's a fool's game to try to eliminate diversity. And it sounds so obvious, right? It's a fool's game to stamp out exceptional capabilities, right? No one's sitting here saying, we've talked about this before, that everybody in the NBA, right, if they're tall, we need to do something to make them shorter, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We love watching sports. We love watching competition. We love watching exceptional performance. And yet for some strange reason, right, because some people over-index on comfort and security and what's good for the group, we end up with, some of these, what I think are, silly conversations. But I understand, right? I empathize why, because we should, back to noblesse oblige, we should help people make their way through these, and we should help people sort of, march up Maslow's hierarchy, right? We should help people pass through Levinger's stages of development and get to level 5 and 6 and 7. We should do those things. Absolutely. right? But we should not give up all those things for everybody being the exact same at everything.
Which is not good for the group.
In the long run.
Actually, just
because it's impossible.
Idiocracy is an interesting example of you just do the whole group thing and it's like, oh wow, it just devolves
but
consistently.
Let's bring in another topic that we talk a lot about: entropy, right?
Yeah, but if you just keep everything that's visible at status quo, at average, there's gonna be entropic forces in the background that are eating everything else that's not visible, and you're actually just gonna start deteriorating
1,000%.
and it's at a very fast rate.
Yeah.
Right. Like it takes a lot of advancement to just I'm sure someone has a theory on this.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of advancement to just combat entropy.
100%.
So you just go with the average thing. It's like, ooh, just give me a nosedive.
Yeah. Because what tends to happen in order to, and I have a whole series of an essay series coming out on this, right?
Is it Substack?
On Substack, yes.
We'll put a link to Substack in the description.
So really fascinating about, why societies tend to fall apart over the long run, right? And that is that people want to matter, and in particular, people in bureaucracies want to matter, and so they take on more and they make things more complicated. That complications then becomes complexity. And at some point, things become so complex that you can't keep them up anymore, and entropy just crashes the whole system, right? Mayans, the Romans, you can go down, right? A bunch of different historical examples.
A lot of story examples, too.
A lot of story examples.
It's Dark Knight Rises, great example of that. Things got too complex. You have too many lies going on, like what's true, what's not true.
Yeah.
And then the system literally erodes from underneath.
Yes.
Right? Bane builds out all the caverns.
Yeah.
And then bombs it and everything implodes.
Yeah.
Right? Because you're building everything on a lie. And it's all these things that you're trying to spin and keep moving. And so even though on the surface it seems like everything's going well, right? They don't need a wartime police chief and all that. It's like, no, everything is falling because the structure has rusted.
Yeah. Yeah. And so the big point here is things either grow or die. And if you think you can just maintain this like this, that what you're doing is, in order to maintain that, you're actually building more structure and complication underneath it. And then at some point, right, it just falls apart.
Yeah. This is another example in terms of real life that people try to do is you see a lot of people in the fitness space, right? Like, oh, and try something. And then it's like, well, there's a little bit of a side effect there. So then you try to combat it with another supplement or something.
Yeah.
And then, then that has another side. So you add another thing. And you have this whole polypharmacy system going. And then something in that whole change breaks and then moving on.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you've distinguished between simply succeeding and truly mastering. Visionary leaders often seek significance beyond traditional metrics. How can leaders reframe success to focus on significance and mattering, especially as we move into this new age?
I actually have another series coming out that I just started to work on called Why. And it's interesting, right? And I'm just going down all the deep rabbit holes on this. And so it could take, a month or 2 or 3 before this actually gets published, or I could end up deciding this is just too much. But, the first real question that, little kids start to ask is why, right? Why are we doing this? Why does this matter? Why do you think that way?
Why do they ask that?
Why do they ask that, right? And ultimately, I believe that part of our responsibilities as a leader is to be able to have a really good answer to the pertinent why questions, right? Why are we doing this? Why are we serving this ICP? Why is this our compelling value proposition? Why do we have these goals? Why is our culture the way it is, right? Why is the world the way it is? Why are we evolving the way we are? And so, getting back to your question, I believe that especially with things becoming a little bit more complex, which is what is always happening until, right, less is more until it's not, and then it collapses. But if we want to avoid major disruption in the trajectory of things, all the way down to the company level, right, we need to be really good leaders at answering the questions why. And sometimes we don't have the answers yet. And so that's a good thing to work on.
It's kind of, we talk about it a lot, but it kind of goes back to the idea of building on bedrock.
Mhm.
Like, what is the most permanent thing that you have?
Right.
And so if you're focusing on the why behind everything, making sure everything aligns with that,
Yeah.
Versus, oh, well, the Wall Street said this last week, we need to do this now.
Yeah.
It's like, which of those is going to lead to consistent, sustainable, long-term success?
Yeah.
For the company, right? You actually perform better in the market, probably, if you focus on your why,
Right.
than you focus on Wall Street or the news or whatever. And there's going to be a lot of people that like to play the current game,
Right.
They just really enjoyed ticking those things and making that work, and taking advantage of those situations. But that's going to, A, burn you out, and B, that's someone else can come along that's a little bit more efficient at that than you,
Right.
has a cheaper labor cost,
Right.
and can just exploit that whole thing a lot better.
Yeah. Well, it gets back to, I think you talked about it in one of our podcasts. If you don't understand why you're doing the things that you're doing, and you're just copying other people, right? And they're continuing to evolve with a very clear sense for why they're doing the things. You're all of a sudden going to wake up one day and you're like, well, I mean, I don't even know where I am. I'm lost. They've just completely outplayed me entirely. I can't just continue to copy them because they just made this right turn move that was just like, I'm sitting here left in the dust.
Yeah, because if they're doing, right, a lot of people just want to copy Apple.
Yeah.
And like, well, they did this and then they did this. And it's like, okay, well, if you do that, you make shoes or whatever.
Right.
And they do a really weird technical, like, right turn. Like, oh, well, we can't really do that. And then now you're just caught on an island. Or worst case, something breaks in your system.
Right.
You don't know how to fix it because you don't know why.
You don't even know why you don't even know why you are where you are because you just copied someone.
Yeah. And so you just get caught out on the thing. You're like, well, shoot, right? Or maybe you had a bunch of people from another organization that came in and kind of implemented their thing there. Well, what happens if those 5 people leave?
Right.
And then you're like, well, I don't know how to rebuild even to where we are. I don't even know how we got here.
Right.
So how am I supposed to move forward? You're just lost in the desert with no compass, no map, nothing, because you just followed people.
Yeah.
And then they just, poof, disappeared.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh.
Right.
That's going to be you then.
Right. And that's why, I know we're touching on things we've already touched on in previous podcasts, but if, the forever agreements are there to create a foundation, and that those foundational agreements provide, it's essentially a northern constellation on, okay, we're doing this because of this. We're doing this because of this. We're doing this because of this. And those are all answers to why questions, right? And so those fundamental questions are, why? Well, because this is our ICP. Well, why? Because this is our compelling value proposition. Well, why? Because this is how we decided that we're going to make the world a better place, right? Well, why? This is why we decided that, we were going to go this direction and focus on these particular objectives in order to advance our cause, in order to advance our compelling why. And these things are consistent with it. So these, forever agreements are foundational to being able to answer why-related questions.
And having those be explicit for the whole company is very important.
Yeah, so that everybody in the company can get, has this northern constellation shining bright for them and look up and say, no, this is why. And then, by the way, they now have what they need to question things. Well, wait a second. Why are we doing that if this is, what we said was important? And back to why the word why is so powerful, it enables us to check one another and have a real clear conversation around, whether or not something makes sense because we understand these really super important why questions.
And it helps build an element of trust, both between people and also, in between different parts of the organization.
Well, not just different parts of the organization. Back to what what we talk about a lot, right? Is developing high trust relationships with all of your ideal stakeholders.
Yeah. But right, so if I know everyone in the company is aligned and understands and is fully aware of the forever agreements, if I have somebody who makes, let's say a leader who makes a slip on something, then someone on their team would be like, "Well, I thought we were doing this."
Right.
It's like, "Oh, good point."
Yeah.
Right. Whereas if you just implicitly trust that the leaders get it, and then you're like, "Well, I don't worry about the rest of the company."
Right.
You're all on a different operating system,
Yeah.
different framework. Well, if something does happen, there's no check there. There's no balancing out of, well, maybe, because I think everyone's gonna have a moment where something impulsive happens. They didn't eat breakfast.
Yeah.
Something stupid happened.
Yeah.
Whatever, they didn't sleep well. You get a little ornery, and then you're like, "Well, this," and someone's like, "No, this is what we said," and then you're like, "Oh, okay. Well, thank you for keeping me in check there."
Yeah, and then as a leader, those are awesome moments for you to display that none of us are perfect, right? And so for you to say thank you, right? And for you to not be creating this culture where all of our leaders are omniperfect, omnipresent, whatever, right? It's like, no, right? And maybe I'm overly sensitive to this. But, please don't make me feel like I've got to be perfect, because I am damn well not perfect. And if you're trying to act like I'm perfect and expecting me to be perfect, we've got a big problem, because, I'm going to make mistakes, and I need you to help me see if I'm making a mistake. That's part of truly caring about the company, right? Company first, team or department second, team third, right? Individual fourth, because ultimately the company is the ship that's carrying us all and helping us provide for our families and helping us maintain high trust relationships with all of our ideal stakeholders. So, yeah, abdicating responsibility because you expect someone to be perfect is just, right, that's a bad, especially inside a commercial organization, right? That's just a bad dynamic to, address sooner rather than later.
Yeah. Well, and in a commercial operation, you can break it down into what behaviors do you want to incentivize? I guess, like, well, they're not going to do that to you. It's like, well, they're probably not going to do that to somebody else. And it's what then reflect on yourself as a leader, and hopefully you're self-aware enough and ego evolved enough to be like, to understand that, well, if I get corrected here, that's in the best interest of the company and everyone within the company.
Yeah.
Right. We're not here to serve my ego. We're here to serve all of our ideal stakeholders.
Yeah.
And so having those corrections is a good thing.
Yeah.
And you don't want to squash any of that out, right? That's bad.
Right.
And that will create a lot of people starting to form and secrets within internally.
Yeah.
Like, well, I don't want to scare somebody, so I'm just gonna tuck this away and put it under the rug.
Yeah.
And then 10 years later it comes out and it's like, well, this is really fun. This just completely, there's a pile of, or a death pit or whatever, is watching Succession, and that's like a whole thing there.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, we don't want to say anything because we're gonna hope that it works out for the best. And even if that situation plays out well, that practice and that set of behaviors, that culture,
sooner or later,
it's going to implode.
Yeah.
You emphasize trust as a cornerstone in evolving organizations.
Mm-hmm. 3 dimensions: character, competency, and connection.
What are the tangible steps visionary leaders can take to build and restore trust within organizations?
Character, competency, and connection. So, right, the character is that, what we say, we walk our talk, our intentions are clear, we live up to our commitments, our agreements. If we fail, we acknowledge that. So we have the character stuff.
You adhere to the principles.
Whole nother conversation. Competency is we put people into positions where they're genuinely competent. if we stretch, we acknowledge that we're stretching, and then we do the best to see whether or not they can take the stretch, that gap, and eliminate it, right, within a relatively reasonable period of time. For us, it's 90 days is our general framework. So that's competency. And then connection is culture and its goals and its ambition and its interests and all the things that I write about in that series. Connections is the most complex, right? But ultimately, it's getting everybody aligned around the importance of character, the importance of competency, the importance of connection. And as the company evolves, right, we are continuously working on those things, because as the company evolves from stage 1 to stage 2 to stage 3 to stage 4 to stage 5, what is important, the skills and competencies to be developed, in particular, the goals, they change. And at each stage, we talk about strategy, and strategy is basically, I think of strategy as very simple. It's about winning, right? And I know some people don't like that concept, right?
Winning's mean.
Exactly. But there's a very, very clear version of winning in stage 1. It's product market fit. There's a very clear version of winning in stage 2, and it's taking that product market fit and proving that you can repeat it, right? There's a very clear version of winning in stage 3. There's a very clear version of winning in stage 4, and there's a very clear version of winning in stage 5. How you win in stage 5 is entirely different than how you win in stage 1. And what it requires is a higher and higher level of goals. It requires a higher and higher level of competency. The competencies are not just about a human. The competencies are about the entire system, right? And so, the back to ideal stakeholders and high trust, character, competency, and connection in terms of what's important given where you are developmentally. Does that make sense? And to me, it's how you win the game you're playing. And each stage is a different game.
Like trust, I would say like trust, success, being healthy or being successful, whatever. All of those are symptoms of you having the right behaviors for the game that you're trying to play.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, oh, you're successful. It's like, no, that's not like a destination.
No.
That's a result of things that is temporary, just like trust is, right? You can do all the things well to achieve trust, and you're like, oh, I got trust, I'm good now, and then do whatever. It's like, it doesn't work. So you get healthy, you're like, cool, and then you stop those behaviors. Well, that's not really going to work anymore.
Right. Once again, bringing entropy back into the conversation, right? Yeah. You just don't get here and all of a sudden you're there.
No, it's like you made it to that stage, and it's like, well, it's like, to put it into video game terms, like we made it to a certain level, and now it's, you don't just stop at the thing. It's like, well, if it just keeps going, it's harder, but you've accumulated all the points, whatever, and skills and things that you need to move forward. But if you just get thrown in there, you're gonna lose, and that's be the same in any professional, right? Sports, you just get thrown into the pro league when you're 12. It's like, oh, you're gonna die,
right?
Or lose all your confidence, and then you're not going to develop.
Yeah.
Right.
And then the other thing is, and this is the tension, right? The other thing, this is what I'm writing about in my complexity series, right? But, as you know, I've never been a video game player.
I understand the frameworks, but I haven't touched a video game in 10 years.
I probably did 4 hours for you growing up, maybe 5 hours.
You bought a Halo Xbox. I remember that transparent thing,
green thing.
It was cool.
Yeah. But the point here is that whether it's an individual or a group or a team or a company or society, right? You let's just say, using the video analogy, you get to level 4, right? And you stop playing, you stop, like, you don't want to take on the challenge of getting to level 5, right? You're going to get bored, right? Playing level 4 all the time, and you're going to lose interest in it, and you're just going to stop playing.
Well, if you look at it from because I think you have to view everything socially.
Yeah.
So let's say you're playing, you have a esports team or whatever it's called, right?
Yeah.
There's 5 of you, and the 4 of the people are off, they're advancing, they're pushing hard, they're growing, and then one person's like, I'm really comfortable at level 3. That's not good for the team. And option 1 is that, well, now the team just kind of sucks because one guy is not very good.
Yeah, because you're only as good as your weakest link.
Or you're just playing with 4 people, right? Because you just either let that guy die and then that character's out of the thing. It's like, well, now we're just, down a man.
Right.
Power play for everybody else kind of a thing. Or they just kick you out.
Yeah.
And then, well, now you're removed from the game, right?
Yeah.
And if your goal is to win across the summation of games,
yes,
which I would say that's playing the infinite game, right?
Right.
If you get kicked out of the game, well, then you're out.
Yeah.
You're not playing any game. And video games are a very interesting arena because so much money is invested into the psychology behind it.
Yeah.
So it's actually a really good way to, it's really analogous to how things work in an ideal sense.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like, oh, we just did all these things to make this work so that it really feeds back, the dopamine reward system for people. Well, this is how that would look like packaged with fantasy stuff or guns or whatever, right?
Right.
So while a lot of people don't play the things, it's like there's still so much to learn from that because there's so much money into it.
Yeah, it's huge.
Most of it comes back to really tapping into the psychology behind all that. And so if you understand that structure, well, then you can gamify a lot of things, right?
Yeah.
Just an interesting parallel.
Yeah.
The ultimate destination you outline in Work 9.0, or is Work 9.0, right? The stage, not the book, centered around self-actualization.
Yeah.
Can you define what self-actualization looks like at the organizational level?
Yeah. I think self-actualization at the organizational level is where you've built a company that is capable of regeneration and growth. So it's not dependent upon you, the founder, right? It's not dependent upon any one individual. The company has become a thing that self-actualizes, quote unquote, on its own because it is evolved to the place where the principles are clear, the values are clear, the forever agreements are clear. The whole organization is deeply invested in protecting the things that truly matter, that are truly at the soul of the company. And, as Warren Buffett would say, it's become an organization that could survive a fool being the leader because it's almost inevitable if it's been around for a long time, decades, it's going to have some foolish leader, right? For whatever reason. And maybe the board made a mistake. The CEO, wanted to replace him or herself with the yin to their yang, but now all of a sudden the company no longer has a visionary leader who has a sense for where the world's going and how the company fits into the world that's going to exist in their minds in 5 to 10 years, et cetera. So the self-actualizing company is one that's not dependent on any particular individual for long-term success. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think the yin-yang thing is interesting because you have a yang as a leader and wants to surround themselves with a bunch of yins.
Yeah.
Because that works.
Yeah.
When they have a company of yins and then you replace the yang with the yin and it's like, ooh, right? You just pulled that whole crucial component out of the company. And it's like, well, yes, it's going to cause a lot of issues,
right?
But it's also a pretty easy thing to solve if you know what to look for,
right?
Right? And so if you have when the organization becomes healthy enough, it basically functions like an organism, right? It has an organic quality to it.
Complex adaptive system.
Yes. So when it has that complex adaptive system and it's working effectively and efficiently, it's going to be very easy to see when something is wrong, right? Like horribly wrong. And hopefully it's, we have all of our principles, we have our forever agreements.
Yeah.
And we can discern that quickly and address it appropriately.
Yeah.
And if we are at that stage, we've probably seen something like this happen before, or somebody on the team has seen this somewhere before.
Yeah.
Because it's hard to imagine a situation in a large organization where people either didn't grow along with it or didn't grow along with something else at another place, right? See, a lot of times where it's like, okay, the leadership team is washed. We got to just bring in, we're getting a new CEO. They're going to bring in their people and try to revive it. It's a little bit of a transplant thing there.
Right.
And sometimes you need to do that.
Yeah.
But that thing that you transplanted, that organ, had to grow in something else, right? It's not like that just poof. It's like we just go hire a bunch of Harvard MBAs around the company straight out of school. It's like, no, I don't think anyone wants to do that.
Right.
Right. Nothing against that. Just there's no experience there. You haven't seen that. You haven't grown with the thing.
And there's no context. And so, I think, when I look at 90 and our evolution, what I've been trying to instill from a cultural perspective, and hopefully I'm doing a better job of articulating it these days, is, as an example, succeed or escalate, right? We all know what hopefully everybody who's been here for a while, right? Has a decent sense for our whys, has a decent sense for, how we divide and conquer, has a decent sense for the need for progress, the need for us to align, define, execute why we're doing these things. And anyone in the company who sees issues, right, they need to bring those issues up. They have a forum. They can bring them up either in a weekly meeting or they can bring them up in a one-to-one. And if they feel like their issues are not being appropriately addressed, right, our culture absolutely needs to be one where they can say, hey, right, I just don't feel like I'm being listened to, right? Can I take this to the next level? Now, if their concerns are completely in alignment with who we are, right?
Then it moves fluidly through the system.
Our principles, our forever agreements, someone, is going to say, you're right. Now, they may be of an opinion that their issue is like a really important issue, but they may be actually wrong, right? They may actually have a point of view that's not consistent with who we are. They may want us to, just do something that's not what we would do. And at that point in time, right, they've got a decision. So I disagree with this. My opinion's strongly held, but we understand their disagreement. We just don't believe that what they're proposing or what they're worrying about is who we are. And so at that point in time, they've got a decision, right? And we don't have this happen very often at all, but you hear on occasion, right, where someone is like, well, I don't agree with this thing. And it's like, well, let's sit down and we'll talk about why. And once you understand the why, if you still don't agree with it, now you've got another decision to make, right? Which is maybe we're not as well suited for you as you had hoped or thought we were. But, but fundamentally, a self-actualizing organization is one where the issues can flow up and down, right? People are totally open and talking about things. There's no politics. People aren't talking behind their backs, right? And people genuinely care about what's in the best long-term interest of the company.
I think succeed or escalate is very much like the immune system of a company.
Yeah.
Right? And as if the immune system is functioning well, it's like, okay, you know exactly when an issue arises and you can identify it precisely. And you learn to do that by, you hopefully have a lot of these conversations, and then you can kind of figure out, this is an issue. This isn't an issue.
Yeah.
And that informs your intuition, and then you can succeed appropriately or escalate appropriately or just attack the issue, right?
Yeah.
I know when to attack it. That's healthy for your immune system. Or I need to know when to attack things or have someone else attack it appropriately. And when you So if you have a lot of things where it's just a bunch of people trying to attack things that they shouldn't be attacking, or it's getting blocked because there's a conflict because the ideas you're trying to go back and forth with on the why aren't made explicit, well,
Right.
then you have inflammation.
Yeah.
And I'm sure I'm butchering some scientific stuff here.
Yeah.
But just inflammation for inflammation's sake
Yeah.
is, well, that's not good.
Right.
And that's a common thing these days. We're like, oh, inflammation's bad. Like, no, there's times where inflammation's a good thing, and we should just let it do its thing because that's an immune response.
Right.
We evolved to do that. In an ideal system, you'd love to just know that, oh, well, there's inflammation here. There's an issue happening. Well, I know that I can trust them to sort it out, or it will get escalated.
Well, yes. And if you think about inflammation, doesn't inflammation come from working out too?
Yeah.
Yes.
So
Right.
if you work out, and then it's like the whole thing, like you ice bath right after
Right.
a hypertrophy session, right, a strength training session, well, you'll squash the inflammatory response.
Yeah.
And so you'll be back to performing more quickly because you won't have the delayed onset muscle soreness, but you won't recover fully.
Yeah.
Right. So you're not going to get all the benefits of the training, but if you have to perform right after, there's an argument to be made that it's good for that. Sure.
Yeah.
But it's just different tools for what you're trying to achieve. But feeling sore is like, well, that's a sign that you did things and your body's repairing and there's an inflammatory response. And in that case, it's good.
Yeah.
Let it happen.
Yeah. So it's interesting. I love this metaphor now, right? Because when you think about a company, especially, they're all evolving, right? You either grow or die. So you think about there's good inflammation and there's bad inflammation, right? And so as a leader,
there's good conflict, there's bad conflict.
Exactly. As a leader, you may be sitting here going, there's a department that has inflammation going on right now, but this is good, right? Because you're growing. And it's like, it gets back to, as a leader, sometimes you need to decide when you need to step in and help, or when you just sort of watch the struggle, because you know that the best lessons are going to be learned through the struggle, right? And
does the issue require medical attention?
Exactly.
Right.
Is this good inflammation or is bad inflammation? And does it require someone to intervene? Right. And there's no perfect answer. Right. But fundamentally, what you want to do is set the organization up. And now I'm actually doing a plug for 90. So I'm going to be very transparent on this. Right. You want to set the organization up. You want to set your operating system up so that you can see where there's inflammation, where things are working and where they're not working. And then you can decide with some decent data, no, that's actually, it's okay. Right. We want that moment. We want the lessons that are coming out of that. That's a stretch moment. This is a good stretch moment for that particular team. Or, right, we got to get down and address this, because if we don't address this, the probability that bad outcomes, right, fundamentally bad long-term outcomes will happen, versus no, there's a good chance that learning will take place here and this will make us better as an organization.
Yeah, because if you're viewing leadership as the nervous system, right? Sometimes the nervous system has to intervene, meaning like I'm going to go to the hospital or go take this anti-inflammatory, whatever your method is there.
Yeah.
There's a lot of times as the nervous system that you want to do something that you know is going to create an inflammatory response.
Right.
Right. There's like, we're going to make this thing, we need to get stronger. Right. And this team is being complacent. They're like, I'm going to stretch them. Right. And you know that there's going to be issues that come along with that.
Yeah.
And that's fine. But ideally, you'd like to be ahead of that and proactive in that rather than reactive in that. Like, make your team strong, have them appropriately stretched, right? Set appropriate goals so that when something that is rather mundane and inevitable as an issue occurs, well, they're not only are they competent in being able to handle that and resilient or anti-fragile, however you want to view it, but also that communication pathway between them and their leaders is well trodden, right? They've done it. They know how to talk about it, and they can resolve that very quickly rather than like, well, I don't know how to bring this up. I don't know how to talk to this thing.
Yeah.
It's like, well, we'd rather do that on our own accord rather than waiting for something to do it to us. And if this response isn't dealt with, and you're like, oh, I'm treating this my own interest as a say a virus,
Right.
right? And the virus then kills the host. Well, then the virus dies.
Yeah.
So that doesn't really work very well either.
Right.
So it always is you want the system to be good so that you can be healthy.
Yeah.
And move forward. And even if you are of the virus type, meaning that you just want to go like you're just pushing really hard, and it's probably not for the best of the company. It's like, well, you still want the company to do well, and you want yourself to do well within the thing so that you can go find a better thing to host to live in.
Yeah.
There's a weird analogy for that, but
it's actually really, really good because I have experienced situations where someone professes to care about what's in the best interest of the company, but fundamentally what they're doing is 100% not in the best interest of the company. They're not dealing with it directly. They're not succeeding or escalating. They're just literally trying to kill the host. And ultimately, it's like, well, if you care about the company, you care about your colleagues, why are you trying to kill the host, right? And so, so that's a moment where either that human being needs, you need to help them understand, I'm not sure what you're doing is really in the best interest of what you're after, or that human being is just deep down inside, is a virus that wants to, they're like, I'm going to kill the host, and yeah, I guess that's not going to be good for me in the long run, but I don't want to think about it because I'm just so mad at the host.
Yeah, there's parallel things there, right, where you're both trying to set them on a better path to understanding the whole thing, but you're also keeping an eye on it.
Yeah.
It's like, is this something we're going to have to intervene on?
Yeah.
Are we going to have a little surgery here?
Yeah.
And because you want it, it's going to take time to discern.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, you're like, well, I want to give this individual the best chance possible.
Yeah,
to
and
help us and also grow as a leader or human or whatever.
Yeah, and we've experienced this where, intellectually we know that it's almost impossible not to, on occasion, have someone who's toxic to your culture.
When it's good to have that, right? That's how you make sure the immune system is functioning. You got to have a little bit of a bacteria come in at some point. You can't just shield yourself from all these things and really inspect everything you put in your body and everything you touch. That doesn't work.
It's a great metaphor, right? Or an analogy. But once you're confident that someone's toxic, right? I mean, genuinely toxic, right? You got to move on that. And even we've had, not many over the last.
We've experienced it.
But we've experienced it, right? And it comes and all of a sudden, next thing you know, that toxicity has leaked into and
it's going to infect the rest of right. Slowly, it's going to get something on your arm and it's going to move, and then you don't want to amputate the whole arm, but worse, moves up and gets in your heart and you're done.
Yeah.
Right.
And so we've seen it, right? And you got to live it probably, as a leader, you got to live it 3, 4, 5, 7, 10, 20 times. I don't know how many times you got to live it. But, even with me and all the bloody decades that I have experienced, right? I have let toxicity, I accommodated it with hope, right? That the person, genuinely was learning and growing. But, my experience has been that, it's really, really rare for when you see that, even though the person says the right things, it's really, really rare where deep down inside they're
a good fit.
Yeah.
And I think most visionaries and leaders out there are, like, I would describe as trait optimistic, or they probably wouldn't be doing what they're doing.
Yeah.
Right. So I think the world's gonna be better, or I think I can make the world better. Otherwise, you probably wouldn't be conscientious because you wouldn't want to delay the present. You wouldn't want to sacrifice the present for the future.
Yeah.
Because if the present's better in the future, well, I'd rather index on the present. And so with that, you get a lot of people that are like, oh, you see the good in people. I think we can make this work. Or no, you know what? Maybe they're just doing their own thing, and that's a good thing. But infections can come in a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
Right. And it's going to take decades of experience or whatever. You could have all the knowledge, but you don't have the wisdom to apply it, for you to be able to identify those things with conviction, right? There's a lot of ways that it can come in, and then you trust somebody else that's doing a thing, but then they're blind to something. And so all that says it's just really hard to do that. And it's like, it's why hard to do that in the medical field as well.
Yeah.
Right. It's just not that straightforward.
Yeah.
But when you do have that confidence, you got to move quickly.
Yes.
And then maybe sometimes you'll make the wrong move and like, well, we acted too quickly. And that happens a lot less than the other side of the coin.
Yeah. By an unbelievable factor.
Well, just off top of your head, guess what
100
ratio
to 1.
is. I was going to say, 99%, 1%. So, right, if you're in this position, trust your instinct on the thing.
Yeah, 100%.
And, right, I check with the team, but you know what to do there.
Yeah.
It sucks.
Yeah.
But, right, you want to keep the system alive and flourishing because that's what's best for all of your ideal stakeholders.
Yes.
Because that person you're cutting out, well, they're not an ideal stakeholder. Legacy is a power driver for visionaries and leaders who aim beyond personal success to long-lasting impact.
Yeah.
What legacy do you hope visionaries listening today will strive towards?
Creating a self-actualizing company that makes the world a better place where people can thrive, that helps us move more solidly into Work 9.0, where people within the company genuinely feel like they're thriving. Now, that doesn't mean that they're thriving and life is great 100% of the time. It's impossible, right? But, if 90% of the time everybody's going home at night saying, I love the work I do, I love the people I work with, I love the people I serve, right? Love's generally speaking, right? I'm using that word.
So if 90% of the time you love what you're doing, that's pretty good.
It's pretty good.
That's really good, right?
Yeah.
Even if 90% of the time you're just net positive on what happened, it's like, that's a good day.
Right. It's like, one of the things, we have the assessment tool coming out and I would love to have a weekly check-in with everybody in the company and, what percentage of the time, what percentage of the days, or not days, right? So what percentage of the time over the last month or last week or whatever, did you go home at night saying, that, I love the work that I'm doing. I love the people I work with, right? Was it 90%, 80%, 70%, right? And I think that to get it to the place where 90% of the time people are like, this is pretty good, right? 100% is impossible, right?
You wouldn't want 100% because that means you're not, or you say 100% right now, but then you look back and like, well, I could have done a lot more because you didn't have the things, and then you're probably not going to learn.
Yeah,
and
this is angels on a pinhead, right?
Well, I always go back to the 85% success rate is optimal for growth.
Yeah,
like, well,
so 85% may be the right answer, but the point is that 10% of the time, you go home and you're happy. That sucks. This is just obvious, right?
Yeah, I'm trying to. There's a percentage where if you win like that, and it might just be 15%, it might just be the inverse.
Yeah.
If you only win 15% of the time, well, obviously you win 0, you're just going to quit the game.
Yeah.
So at some point, that doesn't even work.
No.
And there's a lot of people that would say like, oh, if you're doing like 51% like most of the time, it's good. I'm sure a lot of founders would probably fall into that category where it's just a grind. You just trudge through it.
Right.
And there's going to be times cyclically, or maybe it's like we're moving from a stage 4 to a stage 5 company, and it's not going to be 90%.
Yeah.
But you're going to have built up a lot of confidence, strength, especially across the team, by hitting the 90%.
Yeah. So
when it gets down to, well, we're in a 60% quarter right now.
Yeah. But this is actually, and this was probably another podcast, right? But understanding where you are developmentally, right? Whether you're stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, stage 4, stage 5. If you understand that you're winning the game you're playing 90% of the time, right? As opposed to, I'm in stage 4, but I'm worrying about winning 90% of the stage. I'm in stage 2, but I'm focused on being great at stage 5. No. It's impossible. You're never going to be happy, right? But if you understand where you are and you're winning 90% of the game that you're playing right now, and the game you should be playing right now, right? That is I think that's part of the issue with a lot of people as individuals, as teams, as companies, right? They don't appreciate the game they're playing right now and focus on doing well at the game they're playing. They're playing someone else's game, or they're playing they're trying to play a game that they're not even involved in right now. They're trying to be like a Premier League team when the reality is they're a Division III team, and just become a really good Division III team. Then focus on becoming a good Champions League team. Then focus on becoming a Premier League team, right? So there's something in this conversation around just understanding where you are, being at peace with where you are, and learning how to be good at and happy with what you're doing and knowing it's appropriate for where you are. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It was like if you're a rookie in the NBA and you're like, wow, LeBron spends $1 million on longevity. It's like, well, that's probably not what you should index on right now. Maybe you should like really just focus on bulking up or getting your shots
or
down,
these guys
understanding the playbook, right?
Yeah, or these guys are all making these big endorsement things, and you're like, well, I want these big endorsement things, but like, dude, no one even knows who you are.
Well, yeah, it was Jordan's thing of like, we had media days. He's like, no, you get one stupid thing because I have to be good at my craft, right? My product is all that matters, and I can get the endorsements because I'm a good basketball player.
Yeah.
But if I do anything that sacrifices me being a good player on the court, well, then there's just no point in any of that stuff, right?
Yeah.
Well, and obviously he's done pretty well with that.
Yeah.
But right, it's just an interesting perspective on that. Yeah. So anything you want to say before we close this one out?
The game we're in right now as human beings, I deeply believe we're now into work 8.0. We know where we need to get to. It's not going to be easy to get there. There's a lot of stuff that's going on in the world right now in terms of the status quo is being challenged. As leaders, as founders, we need to help our people appreciate what's happening, why things are happening, and to be able to be relatively decent at answering a lot of why questions. And as a leader, you should be welcoming this moment because this is what leadership's all about. And I just, I really want to do the best I can at helping us have great leaders for the moment we're in, because it's not the easiest moment. So I wish everybody, want to help them as best I possibly can, as best we possibly can.
All right.
All right.
Thank you.
You're welcome.